All right, so we have a big story here that's still developing, but it looks like we have another podcast company that allegedly hasn't been paying some of the podcasters that they hired. Last year it was Cast Media and Colin Thompson. Now it's Action Park Media and Kevin Conley. And they're actually kind of connected in a way, which I'll get to later on. But this was brought to light by Jersey Jerry from Barstool Sports, who claims Action Park Media owes him around $35,000. And now since he's brought this up, more people are starting to come forward, including Matthew Stafford's wife, the quarterback for the Rams. His wife, Kelly, she was doing a podcast for Action Park Media and claims she's owed money as well. So it's not looking good here for Kevin Conley, who's the CEO of Action Park Media, and he's also an actor. You might know him from Entourage. And in 2020, when Kevin started his podcasting company, they also started an Entourage podcast, Victory the Podcast, which I actually listened to in the beginning because I'm a fan of Entourage. So I've been following Kevin's company basically since the beginning, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to go very well. I mean, he was really late to the game here. He started this company basically at the peak of podcasting in 2020, right after the pandemic started, and when every celebrity started their own podcast. So I figured he'd have some trouble with it, but obviously I didn't know it was going to be this bad. But I had a feeling things were kind of falling apart when his biggest podcast, I'd say, I think Victory is probably the most popular one on the network. They announced they're taking a hiatus in June of 2023, and then they came back in September of 2023 for one episode. They made a return episode and then haven't posted since. And then also some other podcasts left the network or just stopped podcasting. I mean, I don't even know what's left, really. I know there's this hockey podcast with Sean Avery, a former hockey player. I think that's probably the most popular one now. And that's all they post to their YouTube channel, just episodes of that. So I think it might be the only one left. I'm not sure. But obviously, either way, it's not going very well for Kevin Conley. But things got so much worse when Kevin and Sean went on this golf show that's hosted by another former hockey player, Ryan Whitney. And he's part of Barstool Sports. So when Jersey Jerry heard about this, he was pissed off that Ryan would work with him, because he claims, I think it was a couple of years ago, it sounds like, he was doing content with another guy, Bobby Berger, who actually has a really successful YouTube channel called Bob Does Sports. But originally, Kevin signed these two to do a podcast together for his company, but then he fired Bob because he didn't think he was talented or something, even though now the guy's really successful, so that was obviously a mistake. But he was fired, and apparently Jerry was kind of left out of the loop, and he kept trying to reach out to Kevin, but he wouldn't respond. So Jerry kept working, he kept making content for them until a couple of weeks later when Kevin's editor or producer reached out to Jerry and told him that he's done. So he explained this all recently to Ryan Whitney on a Barstool podcast, who, like I said, was just playing golf with Kevin Conley, and that's why Jerry brought it up.
Now, videos with a guy who's a very, very bad guy. He's a bad person. Well, I'll tell you what he did. So what he did was, I was working with a guy named Bobby Berger. We were together.
Mm-hmm. Is that Bob Does Sports guy, right? He's awesome.
Yes, exactly.
Love that
guy.
Yep.
And then what happened was, the rat, Kevin Conley, poached us, loved us. I mean, this guy loved us, wanted us to come so bad. Pause.
When did you do this?
Wanted us to come be on his platform, his media company. Made me sign a deal. I signed a deal for $50,000. I guess he got banged up one night, maybe had a few too many drinks, ended up firing Bobby because he said he sucked. He said Bobby sucked. His content wasn't good enough. He didn't know what he was doing. Bobby's a superstar now. Okay, Bobby's a superstar now. Okay, huge star. And then he fired Bob. I was messaging him for 2 weeks. 2 weeks I was messaging him, no answer. Hey, Kevin, really nice, polite. What's the deal here? I was hired with Bobby. We're doing stuff together. I'm doing my own stuff. You signed me to this deal. Do I still put out the podcast? What do you want me to do? No answer. Then I get a text. I get a text at nighttime around, I'd say 11 o'clock from a producer. He didn't even have the balls to message me. This little punk, little rat. He's a scammer. And you were laughing at him and golfing together like it's a good time. Everything was great. Listen, he might be a friend to you, okay? And that's fine. You're entitled to have your own friends, but you don't know the story. He had an editor. He didn't even have the balls to message me, this little rat. This guy is a bad person. He had an editor text me in the middle of the night. Hey, Jerry, just a heads up. 2 weeks later, I'm still putting out videos. I'm making stuff for him. No answer. hey, just so you know, we don't need you anymore.
And
then he owes me $35,000. I went to a lawyer in California because his media company was in California. I went to a lawyer and him $2,500. Okay, and then I gave him another $2,000.
$4,500.
$4,500. His name was Tyler, and then we were fighting it, right? And then he ended up saying, Jerry, this is bad because Kevin Connolly is just going to run. I didn't have great money at the time, but he said, this guy, Kevin Connolly, he's going to run you dry. He's just going to keep postponing court dates, postponing this, postponing that. And then not only does he owe me $35,000, he owes me for the money I paid for the lawyer.
Deal, Jerry. Did you then work and make content, or like was
yes.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
Everything I do here, I was doing there.
Yeah, you can tell by the way he asked that question, Jerry. He's never heard that story before in his life. He has no idea. He didn't know until now.
You can believe me if you want, Jerry.
I believe you because
I didn't know.
And it definitely seems like Ryan didn't know about it because he also just took down the episode with Kevin Conley. And he said, the episode with the Weasel, Kevin Conley, will be removed from the internet as soon as possible. Our podcast stands in solidarity with Jerry and all the other people who are owed money. Yeah, so after that Barstool podcast, Jerry made some tweets about it. He said, hey, Kevin, what happened to all the podcasts that used to come out of Action Park Media? F them too, huh? Had about 7 different people reach out to me today with similar stories to mine. You got nothing coming out of there anymore. I wonder why. And then shit really hit the fan, and people knew this was legit when Jerry made this tweet and said, this piece of shit Kevin Conley must be stopped. Imagine trying to take advantage of an innocent woman like this. He's doing it to everyone. He's a fraud, always has been, always will be. And then he posted these DMs he got from Matthew Stafford's wife. And she said, I did my podcast under Kevin at Action Park for a year, the year Matt won the Super Bowl, had a merch drop that sold out in 48 hours and got paid absolutely nothing. My husband wants to beat his ass, but I'd rather see what happens to him in prison. Yeah, so I think Kevin's going to be in some trouble here. You know, he definitely screwed up big time with this. I mean, obviously, Matt Stafford will have no problem financing a lawsuit and going after Kevin if he wants to. So there are a couple other messages here. I think Jersey Jerry asked her if it was okay if he shared this information, and she said, not at all, go for it. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want the first year in LA to be about me starting a war with a celebrity, but my show was completely sold out, every show, and I got nothing. Was thinking about suing him for all of it, but instead I just wanted him to give me the RSS feed to my podcast, which I didn't realize I didn't own that. And then she said, I thought he just took advantage of me because who I'm married to, and the fact that he didn't think I would care that I just wasn't getting paid, but clearly he was doing it to everybody. And what's even more messed up about this is they actually had Matthew Stafford on a Victory episode, so he was nice enough to do their podcast. And what does Kevin do in return? Hire his wife and then allegedly not pay her. I mean, this was a scumbag move here. And it sounds like this has probably happened to multiple other people who have worked for the company. And what's also funny about this is Jeremy Piven, you know, Ari from Entourage, he actually liked a tweet that said, can we get Jeremy Piven to do a cameo telling Kevin to pay Jerry his money back? So this is not a good look for Kevin, and hopefully they go after him and get the money they're owed. You know, unfortunately with the Cast Media thing last year, which was pretty similar to this, I think most of the people who are owed money in that situation didn't get paid, except for some people that signed with Podcast One, like Brendan Schaub, he ended up getting paid. But if you don't remember, basically Cast Media, they were supposed to be paying all these podcasters who were doing ad reads for them, but it turns out they weren't paying most of them. But then that company was acquired by a bigger podcast company, Podcast One, and they basically said, if you want to get paid the money you're owed, then you got to sign with us, and we'll give you a third now, a third later, and then a third in stock or something like that. But I know some people said, hell no, I'm not going to support this company, like Theo Vaughn, and I'm pretty sure Jim Cornette as well. But I remember the CEO of Podcast One, who, funny enough, is the brother of the director and creator and writer of Entourage. He was trying to beg Theo to join. He said, Theo, come join Podcast One. Big fans will help you get repaid and win big together long term. And Theo just said, not a chance, wouldn't touch that, or Colin Thompson, hell no. Which I think is definitely the right move. You know, obviously Theo can afford it. Unfortunately, some other people probably had to sign because they needed the money, like Brendan Schaub, which, you know, I think they paid Brendan $1.6 million, which in my opinion is not worth it at all. You know, if they paid Theo that kind of money, it might make sense, but he wasn't even owed that much. I think he's owed like $300,000 or $400,000, and they obviously needed him way more than he needs them. I mean, he doesn't need them at all. So not being able to sign Theo Vaughn and then signing Brendan Schaub and giving him a ton of money, that's not going to work out very well. And now it just keeps getting worse because also, just to add to that, of course, Kevin Conley and Action Park Media are in a multi-year deal with Podcast One. And it wasn't part of the Cast Media deal. You know, he wasn't doing this to get money he's owed. Like, this happened in 2022. And also, like I said, the CEO of Podcast One, or Live One, whatever it's called, he's the brother of Doug Ellen, who is the writer for Entourage. And he's also a co-host on Victory, the podcast. And I believe he started his own podcast under Action Park. So all this stuff is tied together. So it seems like the dominoes are starting to fall here, and we're watching the podcast bubble bursting. So I'm sure there's going to be more to this story, which I'll continue to cover. So make sure you guys subscribe, and make sure you go check out my Patreon account if you want to hear about the cringiest Joe Rogan Experience episode of all time, or if you want to hear about the time Brendan Schaub exposed Joe Rogan by accident, or just a ton of other stuff. I think there are over 70 videos. There's a lot of stuff to go through. So if you enjoyed the channel, I highly recommend it.